The Supreme Court just minutes back to a packed house has observed why no elections being held and a new board is constituted. And the operative line comes here where the Supreme Court has noted Srinivasan and others should be kept away. Now, what others means, well, we're going to try and delve a little deeper into that, but the Supreme Court clearly asking that Srinivasan, the president in exile of the BCCI, be kept away and new elections take place, a new board comes in and investigates the matter. Well, this is an extremely important observation coming in, and I would like to, before I go across to Jugal for the latest updates there, we also have Ashish Mehrishi, my colleague who's inside the Supreme Court, giving us a spot on report on what the learned judges are observing. I'd like to cut across to Rasesh Mandani right now, who is outside the BCCI. Rasesh, the BCCI has been boxed into a corner by the Supreme Court. Not much elbow room for maneuver at this point of time. Till now, the BCCI has pretty much been the cat with 9 lives. They really can't do much right now with the scathing observations coming in from the Supreme Court.
You're right. These are scathing observations and nothing less. Slowly but surely, the Supreme Court had been taking a microscopic view of the entire misadministration of the BCCI, and now their observation about the fact that Mr. Srinivasan be question raised about why Srinivasan should contest that election, why he should be a part of that AGM, the questions about why he was allowed to own that franchise. These are just scathing remarks coming in from the apex court of the land. All along, the BCCI has been looking to postpone the elections to simply ensure that Mr. Srinivasan be allowed another term. Remember, he is the chairman of the ICC right now. If he wins the election again, he rules Indian cricket for another 3 years. And the accusation all along has been that Mr. Srinivasan has been looking to deal it not as an institution, but looking to rule world cricket in that sense. And so Supreme Court making these observations, and all this, of course, after allegations of the spot fixing scandal coming into limelight, linking all of them together. These are questions, these are observations. As things stand, it's not an order, but when the Supreme Court says these things, obviously you are expected to act. It's all likelihood that perhaps the BCCI would seek some time, but we will have to wait and see how this plays out.
But do stay on with us, Rasesh, and I'd like to bring in immediately Mr. Hattangadi, who's joining us from Ahmedabad. Mr. Hattangadi, the latest emanating out of the Supreme Court, and that's noteworthy. Important observation. Why no elections being held where the BCCI is concerned? Form a new board and investigate. Srinivasan and others should be kept away, and that is the operative line, isn't it, Mr. Hattangadi?
Yes, and some hard questions that every cricket lover would have liked answers to. Yes, it's a very, very valid question that why are elections being stalled? If somebody is not available or not qualified, why do you have to defer the elections? These are valid questions, and I think what the Supreme Court has done in the process is that they've gone down to the bottom of this, and they are ensuring that they can just make things very clear to the, the beauty of all this is they've kept the game of cricket above every individual. And this is where all fingers are going, and all arrows are pointing to maintaining the sanctity of the game of cricket and the cricket fans. So it's obvious that they have some hard questions that they are posing. It just remains to be seen where this will go at the end. But
Mr. Hattangadi, the writing has been on the wall for a fair bit of time for the BCCI. The Supreme Court just reading it out aloud now. Do you reckon that the body is pretty much left with very little maneuver, very little elbow room to do anything at all? Do you think now they will be pushed to make a change, or like Mr. Lalit Modi has been saying all along, he spoke to Headlines today, that the BCCI is pretty much going to find every every corner, every nook and cranny to explore how to get out of this tight spot?
Look, the BCCI has been very positive and in the attacking mode right from the last 18 months. So to expect them to be defensive now would be foolish, and from an outsider's perspective, not the right thing to do. They've been offensive, they've been defending themselves, but being very aggressive in the way they've gone about it, and that's that's expected for them to, take that route even at this stage. But the issue is at this stage, if the Supreme Court comes out with these scathing observations and asks some hard questions, as we see they're asking, it would mean, really looking at where the BCCI goes from here, because let's not forget that the majority of the members have voted in favor of Srinivasan. So, this could mean a turnaround in terms of the whole system, or would it give the Supreme Court another dimension in terms of how they look at it? All remains to be seen at the moment, but I can tell you one thing, the plot is thickening at this stage.
Well, and you're bang on there. The plot has been thickening for a while. Do you reckon now, with all these scathing observations coming in, the BCCI is pretty much going to be forced to make a cleanup?
Very good question. I'm not sure about, if you asked me that is the BCCI going to get cleaner? I'm not sure, but the very fact that these scathing observations have been made gives you a feeling that even the apex court of this country believes that all is not well in the corridors of power and all is not running smoothly in the corridors of power. That should be, let's leave judgments aside and recommendations aside. That itself gives you a clear indicative that look, even the apex court is voicing an opinion that a lot of people have been observing over the past few years. The very fact that you've been non-transparent on a lot of issues, and this is something that might clear or might give an opportunity for the same members within the BCCI to realize that look, here the apex court is not happy and they're pointing out scathing observations. Is it time for us to clean up from within? Whoever comes into power, the fact is that they need to clean it up.
Do stay on with us, Mr. Hattangri. Lots emanating from the Supreme Court. Headlines today getting you the very latest. And with what we are getting in at this point of time, just minutes back, scathing observation being made by the Supreme Court. Clearly, the learned judge is stating why no elections being held. A new board needs to come in and investigate. And the operative lines in the part where the board, where the judges have said that Srinivasan and others should be kept away. I'd like to cut across to Jugal for the very latest. Jugal, can you apprise us of what's going on inside right now?
Well, Preeti, the hearing is still continuing today. Talking from the side of the BCCI and Narayanaswamy Srinivasan are a battery of lawyers being led by Ariman Sundaram. He's a senior counsel here. And what was the onslaught initially from the side of the petitioners that we saw earlier this week is now being defended. But of course, that defense seems to be weakening by the minute, because let's just summarize for our viewers. Apart from the latest that we've just informed our viewers, Supreme Court asking the BCCI to explore the option of conducting elections, questioning just why elections cannot be conducted simply because a certain individual and his people are not qualified. Is that a reason enough? Apart from that, the Supreme Court has also asked the BCCI as to just what grounds did the Chennai Super Kings team actually be was actually owned by India Cements. What was the board of directors composition which actually gave the go-ahead for owning India Cements? Apart from that, Gurunath Mayappan's role has been questioned. The Supreme Court also, in a sense, going further and now talking about elections. If the elections are to indeed take place, and this will perhaps be the deepest cut that the Supreme Court will, if at all it does translate into an order, make, because then you are actually challenging the very DNA of the BCCI. Because let's not forget that through all of this, N. Srinivasan still continues to be a legally elected president. Now, if the elections are to take place again, will the BCCI members who supported him in the past, who propelled him to this position, change their tack? Will the constitution of BCCI perhaps come in the way? Will the BCCI yield to what is now being an extremely heavy and consistent onslaught on itself? Are all questions that need to be seen. And also, Preeti, let's not forget the larger picture fate of Indian cricket, because behind these closed doors of the Supreme Court is also the Justice Mudgal, second portion of the Justice Mudgal Committee report, which talks about the dealings of a lot of players, the misdemeanors, alleged misdemeanors of a lot of players. Now, whether, according to the petitioner's demand, will the Supreme Court agree in making these names public? Will a full disclosure take place? Are questions that still remain to be answered, and those questions are now being dealt with behind behind the closed doors of the Supreme Court that you see.
Yes, the Supreme Court clearly had refused to make those names public, but had said that maybe the names of the teams that these players belong to would be made public, especially player number 2 and player number 3. We'll keep getting our viewers the very latest. We have Jugal, who's right outside the Supreme Court, reporting on the story. Rasesh Bandani outside the BCCI. We have Mr. Hartangadi, former cricketer, with us from Ahmedabad. Continuous coverage on the story on what's emanating from the Supreme Court. We'll get you the latest.